Here we are. Great. All right, we're gonna start this way. First, I need to have everybody drop a 2 to see, or actually drop a 3 if you see Nathan, Justine, and I on the screen. So to make sure that everybody sees us.
And this is the Q&A channel in the Slack, correct?
Yes, that's where we ask for feedback, where people can come back to us. So if you have stuff to,
Great.
All right. I see
And
3. Great. So we're in business. We're in business. So I don't introduce. Thank you, Elosis. Thank you, Christopher. Thank you, Kayla, Ali, Eric. Thank you so much for confirming. George, thank you for confirming. So my name is Loic. I haven't changed name since the beginning of the day. I'll keep it for the rest of the day. But I'm very pleased with the session we're going to have. It's another also workshop. Actually, it's an hybrid workshop and interview, kind of theory meets practice. And I'm really excited to, welcome back Justine Blazer, who spoke at Create on August 21st. And actually, I was so excited about her talk with Bobby that both of them, I said, just by the time they end their session, say, you guys, you need to come back, okay? and then I disappear. And then Justine is like, oh, so I'm coming back? I'm like, absolutely. So Justine, thank you so much for coming back. And how are you today?
Thank you for having me. I am doing so well. How are you guys?
We're doing great.
Awesome.
It's been a packed day. And then I want to welcome also Nathan Dohse. We met through mutual friends and partners, and actually we decided to do well, maybe you want to tell more about the contest because it's still up, and I want to make sure people on the stream today are all aware of the contest and how they can join.
We're so excited about it. We're doing a Caring for Creators contest with Music Expo and AGD Entertainment. And this is we're giving away some passes to the November festivities from Music Expo.
Yeah.
And we're giving away some design packages from AGD Entertainment through our creative services. So anyone can go in and sign up. This was brought to us by Bauer Entertainment Marketing. They've done a great job of putting this contest together for us. And so if you visit AGD Entertainment social pages, if you sign up for our strategy sessions, you're going to get the information on this. If you follow us on socials, you'll see the posts. And then Music Expo as well has been putting out this contest. So it's just you sign up. There's no reason not to. It's a random selection prize of somebody's going to win some free passes. So this is a great way for anyone that doesn't have a pass yet to the November thing or needs some creative support to win this prize. But I think it's also a way of just spreading the word about what's going on here. And I think that's great. So if you've got an artist friend that needs to be plugged in to this community, get them into that contest. It's a good way to kind of introduce people to what's going on.
So I drop in the Slack channel, I drop the link where you can subscribe, register.
Perfect.
It's free. You'll pull a winner. The winner will get a package, a creative package, and I think some of that you're going to touch base today during your workshop. And then also as part of it, we're giving away free passes to Music Expo Summit, which will be November 13 and 14, and would be kind of the way to wrap up the year. It's been an interesting year for everybody, to say the least, but we had amazing presenters and speakers and content, and it's an opportunity to all get together before the end of the year. So this is at the moment where I scoop out, and I'll let you run the show, and I'll just be here assisting. So I'll take myself out, and
awesome.
And you tell me how we do this.
And we'll dive in. I think Justine's going to join us back here in just a little bit for a conversation after we go through this release conversation.
So Justine and I, we're going to go grab coffee, okay?
That's right.
And we come back.
Grab a coffee.
We'll see you guys soon.
See you guys.
Get hyped, and we'll be back here in a minute. So welcome, everybody, to the music release workshop. And like has been said, my name is Nathan Dohse. And and I want to talk with y'all about release strategies and putting out your record. And I think what to give some background here, as the introduction was made, I see in the view there that I put together this program called 0 to 60. Okay, I put this together about 7 years ago, after spending 15 years as a performing artist, and going out and doing the thing on my own. And really what we put together was trying to find a way of supporting artists with very practical information and providing accountability and support to artists. And really the motivation for this was, I thought to myself, what was it that I needed when I was 20, 21, making that decision to go full time into the creative arts, and what support did I need at that time? And we just tried to create that in our 0 to 60 artist development program. So what I'm here to do today is to take you through some of the concepts that we implement in that program, and just some of the ideas that we have towards artist release. And so it looks like everybody's engaging on the Slack channel, which is great. So what I'm going to do is, I have a first little image here that I made that y'all are welcome to grab, keep, and hang on to. And I'm going to send that over the Slack channel now. So hopefully this loads and does how I planned for it to. It's loading on my side. And so we'll see if that comes through. But to start things off, the first thing that I want to talk about today is balancing art and industry. This is kind of our motto for AGD Entertainment. And what we've found is the constant battle to maintain artistic integrity while being commercially viable is exhausting. This is an exhaustive thing that comes over the artist, is to say, hey, how can I do what I want to do creatively and not be plagued with the questions of commercial viability? And so for us, the first thing that we want to start with in the discussion with the artist is always going to be about honesty, about what is going to fulfill you creatively. Okay. And if we can be honest about what is fulfilling about the process of creating art, then we can start to put together release planning with clear objectives and realistic goals. And the number one thing that is so important in putting together your release strategy is setting up your goals and objectives from the very beginning, and knowing what a win looks like. Okay, and separating what is a creative goal and what is a industry goal, and starting to make sure that you've identified the differences between those two, because when those blur, we can have a whole lot of confusion. And so an example of that is a creative goal is going to come down to a lot of the things like the sound of the record, having maybe a certain producer work with a certain producer, or to work in a certain studio, to have your music sound similar to XYZ artists, and to actually capture that sound, or to maybe record for the first time, maybe to do a full-length record as opposed to EPs. These are artistic goals that sometimes we're not spending enough time or giving credit to. And sometimes when you start to work with maybe a management consultant, or maybe you start to work with a team, and they're consulting you on what to do to have success in the industry, before you start those conversations about how to have success in the industry, you need to have your artistic vision in place first, because they don't always align. And you need to be strong in what your artistic vision is prior to setting your business goals or your industry goals, because standing firm in that is very important, so that you can now start to balance the advice and the guidance that you start to get as you start to work with the team in balance with your artistic goals. A great example of this to me has always been the band, and now I'm going to date and age myself with this one, but is a band called Insane Clown Posse, ICP. If you're watching, you know, maybe I don't think the new generation is very familiar with this band, but ever since day one, I've always thought to myself, I have no idea how this group has become nearly as possible, like how their success has been possible. But when you look at what they've done with their craft and with their career, they stayed very, very true to an artistic goal that they had, and just started to dive in and find their fan base. Yeah, they're called the Juggalos. Yep, Juggalos. All right, lovely. We're having good conversation here. We're talking. I dig it. Okay, so this band to me has always been an anomaly, but there's no better place to look for somebody who has known, for a group that has known what they wanted to do. They knew that what they were doing artistically would resonate with a group of people, and they stubbornly and very aggressively carved out both their creative objectives and their industry objectives, and they achieved them one by one after the other, and became one of the more successful independent acts, you know, to break the music scene. And it's just, you know, it's just an amazing example to me. This is an example of knowing your artistic goals first, and then jumping into creating some industry goals and staying confident in those. And so that's the cornerstone of what we're going to be talking about today, is that balance of art and industry, and that's the cornerstone of everything that we do over at 0 to 60. So making sure that we have that balance. I love it. Tried to list them as a gang. Yes, they did. Yeah, love it. All right. So I'm going to hit you all with the next slide here. We'll post this up, and I want to take you through our 0 to 60 program. This is just a behind the scenes, y'all. This is just this is who we are. This is what we do. I started the 0 to 60 program because I met a bunch of management consultants in Nashville when I moved to Nashville as an artist, who were graduates from some music business program, hadn't worked in the industry, and I saw that they were charging $500 a month for you know, management consulting, with no outline of really what needed to be happening, not a lot of structure, and an artist would engage them and go through 2 to 3 months of working with this management consultant, and by the third month they'd finally have the plan in place, and then they go, hey, I'm out of money, like $1,500, you know, I'm out of money. I don't have any more money to do the plan we just came up with. And so the whole goal was to say, hey, you know, we don't have to recreate the wheel here, but let's just try and outline what the basic plan is for a record release, prior to engaging the client in any sort of management consulting. And we call it artist coaching. So, which, you know, coaching has become a kind of hot button term. 7 years ago, it feels like life coaching was really getting going. We got teased for being coaches, being called coaches, you know, hey, put me in, coach, take me off the bench, these types of things. But it really does feel like, you know, sometimes you really do need a coach to just kind of call some shots for you. Did everybody get this slide? Hopefully this came through for everybody. It looks like it loaded it loaded for me. But
And we put it
we're
on
going
the
to dive
screen
in.
for you.
Awesome. Cool. So our program is based off of 5 pillars. Okay. The 5 pillars of the 0 to 60 program are operations, marketing, performance, publicity, and brand development. Okay. I feel like these 5 pillars are going to really, we have to, as artists, we really can carve out all of the task work that's going to go into our release. And I feel like most of the tasks can fall into one of these buckets. So these were just the 5 that made sense to me when I was putting this together. And, 7 years later, they've stayed true to us. And so I want to take us through, but before we do that, I want to talk about the 6 phases as well that make up our program. So the 6 phases are going to be discovery, setup, activation, release, cycle, and vacation. Okay? And discovery is what we were just talking about in the balancing art and industry topic. Discovery is who are we and what do we want to do? And now what I want you to do as an artist is I want you to take the discovery and I want you to start to apply that to each of these buckets, each of these pillars. As I go into my operations, I've got distribution, team building, revenue streams, business structure. Okay, these are going to be some main tasks, talking points for our operations. Marketing, social planning, digital advertising, streaming development. Performance, showcasing, tour development, release shows, publicity, bio, press releases, premieres, features, interviews, performances, and brand development, narrative, identity, and partnerships, right? So we're going to talk about each of these a little bit as I go through this workshop. And when we bring Justine back, we're going to do a little bit of talking on each of these during that time as well from her experience as an artist. And we're just going to tackle these pillars. And we're going to talk specifically about performance, which I think is a very interesting and fun conversation right now as this is probably the most I've heard of ICP in my entire life. Love it. And we're going to talk a lot about performance when Justine joins me, as I think it's an interesting time to be prepping and building for that with COVID kind of changing the game for everyone. So if we can take our mindset and if we can break all of our tasks and all of our everything that we need to do and separate it into these 5 pillars. If you sit down to make your release strategy, try mapping out these 5 buckets. Start with discovery of saying, what are my objectives in each of the buckets and what are my expectations? Okay, what am I hoping to achieve in each of these buckets? So really break it down and go into each one and set some goals for each one. What are you trying to achieve in your operations? Are you happy with the distributor that you're working with? Or would you like to scale up to a more selected distributor? This would be an example like TuneCore would be open to anybody. I pay the fee, I get through, or maybe on this release, I want to scale up and I want to work with somebody like AWOL or The Orchard or something of those lines where it's a selective process, it's a curated process. So digging in and starting to work on those goals, working on those objectives and expectations. So once you've outlined your objectives and your expectations in each of these, setting some goals, marketing, maybe you set a certain number that you want to move towards. You want to get to a certain number of fans, on a specific platform. Performance, you want to play X amount of shows, right? So then we're going to start moving into the setup. Okay. And one of the number one things that is going to go into the setup of your release strategy, and I don't care who you are, and how big your team is, the setup of your release strategy, the cornerstone task of this setup is going to be research. Either you're doing it or somebody else is doing it, but somebody is researching. You've clearly identified who and what you are, you've made your content, and now we have to go in who has had success that has come before you, and what is happening that's coming after you. And what tends to happen with artists is we try to steal research all the time, right? Like we try to snag contact lists. We try to jump into different ways of getting somebody else's research. And it's just dangerous. It's just a dangerous thing because in the world of research, if you take that list, you don't know where it came from, who's still there. So doing fresh research is always going to be the cornerstone task of your setup. And again, you need to take that back to all 5 of these buckets. You need to be doing research on your operations, your marketing, your performance, your publicity, and your brand development. And knowing what's going on in the genre, knowing what's going on for your level of craft. And this is the same for a startup singer-songwriter as it is for Lady Gaga, okay? And then what you're going to start to do is you're going to take your research and you're going to start putting it into an objective pitch plan, saying these are the people that I'm going to contact, and this is how I'm going to contact them, and this is how I'm going to reach out to them. And you really need to do that at the very beginning of this process. Planning that out, you need to plan it. And then what we're going to do is in this setup phase, we have an outline of who we are, what we're doing, what our objectives are, and we're going to start to ask for some introductions from the people in our community. So through before we start cold pitching, you want to look at who's in your community and starting to connect them to each of these buckets. Once we hit activation, this is where it's all going out. It's all going live. I'm sending my emails. And this needs to be in advance of the release date, right? So the setup, we're going to set release dates, but activation, you're going to want to give yourself, it doesn't matter. This could be a single. This could be an album. You need to know your release times. And a standard activation for us, we're going to be moving the project into activation about 6 to 8 weeks prior to a first single releasing. At least 4 weeks minimum. That's what the DSPs are asking for to get your song into their system and to get everything live. And all of this really gets very succinct across all of these buckets. Your pitches need to be going out 6 to 8 weeks in advance of your release of your first single. Now, once you put your first single out, maybe you have an EP. The next single can come out 4 weeks after, maybe 6 weeks after. I wouldn't go more than 6 weeks at this point. And then maybe your EP drops. Maybe you have 2 singles out, and then maybe an EP drops or an album. I have done up to 4 singles on a 5-song EP if it makes sense for the artist. But that's where you really got to circle back to the objectives and the expectations that you have, and just kind of plan all of that out at the very beginning. But you're going to want to give yourself 6 to 8 weeks. Now, once you're hitting the release, ideally all of these pitches are coming in. You're finding the playlists that you're connecting with. You're finding the performances are landing. And that 6 to 8 week lead time of activation, that period, is enough that you can get traction in each of these buckets and have it start to land and be succinct all together. We can be ramping up our social media and growing our followers through engagement posting and activations, teasers and things like that, while we're booking a tour or while we're booking a series of live stream schedules, or just having big release shows or showcases during that time. It's enough time that we can start to introduce ourselves to writers at publications and be discussing with them when would be a good time for features to go out, or maybe they want to do a premiere. And you have enough time to pitch and follow up with all of the targets that you've made. And one of the biggest things that goes missing in this is, I think the biggest bucket that gets a little left untouched is the brand development bucket, where we are working with brands that are partnerships and things like this, and having those partnerships, however big or small, landing right in the middle of your release is really very important to the success of your record. And what partners do, yeah, absolutely. We're talking a little bit about, I got a question from Naomi about release dates. Yeah, I think release dates, so the brand partnerships, we want to make sure that these are falling in, and brand partnerships are so viable to connecting you to a fan base that is in line. They're already spending money. They're already engaged with the same demographic. And this is a major piece that gets missed in your release planning is brand partnerships and brand development of who are the partners that you are wanting to work with. I think artists usually go for gear companies first. They're usually like, oh, I play Gibson. I'll reach out to Gibson. But I want to challenge people to be thinking about nonprofits. I want you to be thinking about, clothing companies are easy, but nonprofits are great for early partnerships. Brands that have missions or statements, or they just have a very good aesthetic. But this is a great way of timing this. So this needs to go into the prep before the release. And so, yeah, all of this setup is even before we set these release dates. So a great question from Naomi is when should we set these release dates? What tends to happen, y'all, and if you're artists, you've done this, we've all done this, we set the release dates and then we start the setup, right? We go, my next single is going to come out this day, and we pick the release date. Usually that release date is not grounded in much logic, I would say. And artists, I think we tend to be very emotional in our decision making, and so that's fine. We need to, again, back to the very beginning here of what is the artistic goals. We need to pay attention to those emotional charged things. But what tends to happen is we set the release date based on something usually emotional, maybe artistic. This is what I hear all the time. This is a summer song, so it's coming out this summer. Well, I might be talking to the artist in April, and they haven't completed any setup. There's not any sort of strategy. No research has been done. We don't have a pitch plan. We may not even have content. And so this is starting from the assumption that your content is in completion, right? I'm talking about working on a completed content release, okay? So setting your release date based off of these ideas is a common mistake. It might make sense artistically, but if the timing's not right, if you're saying, hey, it's a summer song and you're getting started on it in April or May, well, guess what? Then it's next summer. I'm sorry, but that's if it has to be a summer song. Or maybe you drop it in, hey, this is the last song of the summer. And that's kind of coming back to your marketing and your narrative of you can have a narrative around your release that makes it make sense and still draw a connection or an emotional connection to a song without it fitting perfectly into that plan of being a summer jam. And I just use that because that's an easy example. So really, we try to not set release dates for our artists until that setup is totally done. I need to be looking at a pitch plan. I need to be looking at a social media plan, what we're posting, when we're posting it, and on and on. So I want to make sure that the setup and the strategy and the plan is totally in place before I set my release dates. And then from there, we pretty much follow a model The first single is going to drop about 8 weeks after we launch activation. Sometimes I'll let the artist bump that up to a 6-week lead time, depending on some of those objectives. And then I'm dropping any subsequent singles a minimum of 4 weeks apart. And for those of you who might be, for some basic knowledge, your standard release date is on Fridays. This is when most of the playlists are going to be updated. So if you're wanting to participate in the playlist world, you're going to want to release on Friday. If you have a very niche fan base, you can do a special release on a Thursday night or something like this, or a specific time. But I'd make sure that you have your audience really prepped for any sort of special release that's not going to be on a Friday. I love it, Ryan. Thank you. Pitch plan. So we talked about doing custom research. Really, the thing is that you've got to dig in and looking at all of your objectives, taking these 5 pillars. The first place to start is just in researching. You've set your objectives and researching the opportunities that are available to you for each of these buckets. Once we have the marketing outline, what are some objectives for your marketing, and digging in and putting a pitch plan. And I literally, I put it all down. I say, I want to be pitching to 15, 20 people for performances in my hometown. We're going to dig into that a little bit more when we bring Justine on and talk about performances. So this is the outline of everything that's going to go into an artist release. Okay. And what we kind of do is we kind of start to task out each of these. And I want to take a minute to just talk about back to these 5 pillars. And to say, when we talk about operations, we need to be thinking about each of these things separately. The distribution, the team building, revenue streams, and going through those. For me, marketing is, operations to me is team building. You need to be thinking about building your team, okay? What that looks like. Sure, you may not need a label, right? But you may need, that might be your producer. That might be the first person on your team, but maybe you do need a label. And that's from doing some research into your genre, the goals that you have, and making those decisions. Marketing, things to be thinking about in marketing. Marketing is the way that we talk about ourselves as an artist, the way that we're sharing our content, the way that we're sharing our music and story. So planning your socials. Maybe you're somebody who wants to be on your stories all the time and very impromptu. That's fine, but setting yourself a schedule, setting yourself a plan. But, with how hard it is to be an artist, I usually am asking my artists to plan usually about 60 posts that they can line out on their release schedule. What they're saying, what the copy is, what the content's going to be. Performance and is, some artists in this new digital playlisting world think, hey, I'm not really a live performer. I don't want to tour. And that's okay, but you do need to be connecting your music and art with people in real life. So no matter what the big picture is, maybe it's digital, live streaming is great, conversations, but the music has to connect with people in real life. So make sure you're taking the time to carve out a strategy for performance that is succincting to where you can actually speak to somebody and say, hey, check out my new music. Publicity is the way other people talk about us. Okay, this is validation. This is where we get the validation of the art. And this is very important in achieving a lot of the other goals that you're going to have, is that there's other people in the music world that are giving you validation. And then brand development is, what is the story? Who are we? And then finding people who match that narrative and partnering with them, right? Finding your community of partners. That may be other artists, but it might be your nonprofits, your brands, and things like that. So that's the outline of our program. And I think that this is a good framework even for y'all just to kind of go and say, hey, I'm going to go into my release. Just start to think about each of these buckets and do more research into them. And there's professionals that you can hire within each of these. So even if you just start in that operations and you go, hey, I need to build my team. Well, you can be looking at adding team members for each of these buckets. But depending on where you're at in your career, you may not need a team member for each of these. This may be something where you just start to focus your energy and your thought into planning your release with these 5 buckets in mind, and then put yourself through these phases saying, I'm going to first think about who I am and what my objectives are. I'm going to do the setup required. I'm going to give myself lead time to activate everything before my release happens. And then to do these last 2 phases. Cycle is everything that's going to come after that release. That's the growth opportunity. That's when you need to be hyper aware and hyper engaged, because that's when the opportunities start coming in. Sometimes we're exhausted after the release, but in the cycle, that's when engagement is key. So there's not as many tasks going into this part, but there's a lot of just staying engaged with what's happening around you. And then lastly, one of the most important phases of release, and this is something where a lot of people disagree with me, y'all, and I'm happy to have people disagree with me. I'm happy to think of ways to be outside the box, but there's influencers and there's artists. And if you want to be an influencer, then the key is to be always on. And I can agree with that. You have to be always on and always engaged. But I don't believe that about artists. I think it's really important that we stop and we take some time to find new inspiration. And you need to plan that. You need to plan your vacation. You need to know when you're checking out and refreshing, okay? And so once you're done with your release, make sure that you have a vacation plan in mind. And if you have team members, make sure that they are in support of that plan, and make sure that they are in support of that time for you to refresh and find new inspiration. I want to talk a little bit about, and we're going to bring Justine in here in just a minute. Thank you. Yeah, hearing from Eric, the distinction between influencers and artists. Y'all, I can't speak to this enough. If you want to be an influencer, go be an influencer, and that's great. And maybe you're an artist as well, but one thing is going to overtake the other, in my opinion. And you have to know which one you're wanting to put out front and put, you know, in the priority. I heard a great interview from Brandon Flowers in the promotion of this new Killers record, where he got, it was the Spotify advice, and somebody had asked him, they'd said, you know, what's the worst advice you got, or the best advice you got? And he said, oh, the worst advice I got was to be a star on and off the stage. And he left that and he goes, I don't think I want to do that. I want to be a star on the stage, and when I'm off the stage, I want to be off the stage. And he very early on committed to that. And I look at the Killers' progress, and he's such a rock star. I think Brandon Flowers is just one of the greatest rock stars of our generation, in my opinion, my generation. And but you don't hear about him. You know, when he's on, he's on, and when he's off creating somewhere, and then we get to reap the benefit of that. So don't be afraid to kick against the culture that tells you to be always on, but make sure you're planning your vacation. Make sure you don't disappear off the radar. Schedule some posts to go up, schedule some content to go up, but just letting people know, like, hey, here's this throwback thing, and it posts once a week or something, and set the schedule and dip out a little bit. Go hide out in the cabin and write some great tunes. So here's my last slide is coming across, and this is my mantra, y'all. This is the number one thing for me. If you set one goal, let that be to capture your community. Okay? Make sure that you know who are your surroundings and who is with you and a part of what you're doing, and capture those people. So if you're a local band, be a local band until you have completely captured your local market. If you are a regional state band, stay focused on the state. There's no shortcuts, and there's no you can't create a miracle. The only thing that you can do is impact the person right next to you. Okay, and the thing about this, y'all, is that what tends to happen is that then we start to lean on our friends, but maybe a little bit too much. So I want you to capture your community. I want you to engage the people around you. But remember that your friends aren't your fans, particularly. They might like your music, but that doesn't mean that they're a diehard fan or that they love you. But they are your allies, and they are there to support you. And you do need support from your community. And the way you get support from your community is to ask for it. And during your release, you need to boldly ask your community for the support to share your music with their group of music lovers. And the example that I have for this is that if I ask my friend John, hey, what type of music do you like? He might say the music I create, but probably not. We're just buds. We met at work, whatever. He might like a different genre of music. If I ask him to come to my shows, he'll probably come to my shows. He'll probably listen to my music, but he doesn't like the genre of music I make. So expecting him to be a fan is not fair. The better question is to say, hey, this is the type of music that I make. Do you know anybody who would like this kind of music? And if you do, would you mind sharing my music with them? This is an easy ask. What I encourage my artists to do on release day is ask 5 friends to share the music with 5 friends, okay? If we do this on a regular basis, if we boldly ask our community to share and engage on release day, it will exponentially grow. And if that's your number one goal, that never changes your whole career. Because guess what? All Beyonce has to do to have a successful record is get her community to really engage, because her community happens to be the biggest people in the music industry. So she still has to get them to engage with her release in order for it to get across the line, right? And so we always have to stay focused on the people directly around us and engage them as best as we can, and let that be the number one goal. And so then we grow our community by coming to things like Music Expo, networking, and connecting like that. But don't try and skip ahead. Don't try and cheat the system. Look around you. Look at what is right in front of you and say, I want to create an impact here and now, and let that grow. And don't be afraid to take the time to grow. And so that's it, y'all, for me on the outline of the 0 to 60. These are our philosophies. These are our ideas. I'm getting some questions over the Q&A, which I'm super pumped about, but we are going to hit more of those questions after we talk with Justine. So I want to bring Justine Blazer on, and we might get some help from Loic to do that.
Hello.
Right. Awesome. How are you, Justine? Thanks for hanging out and waiting and listening to me talk. I hope I wasn't boring you too bad.
No, it was fine. It was really good information. I love kind of hearing this again. It's really refreshing to get that information once again, because as an artist, you sometimes do get lost in sort of the hustle and bustle of things, the emotional decisions that are sometimes made. So you touch on a lot of great things.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to hear from you, and I want to keep on this topic of capturing your community. I think we probably have a varied audience here. And what I want to do, and so for the audience sake as well, I want you to go through this practice with me and Justine together here. I want to go to our 5 pillars, and I want to just talk to you about the first wins that you got in your career, because I think this is so important to reflect. So maybe, for the guests who haven't seen you speak, I know you've been on the Music Expo before, but for the guests that haven't heard you speak, maybe you can give them an overview of your career and who you are, and then we'll dive in, and I want to talk about these early wins.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I have been in the music industry for professionally over 15 years now. I put out my very first single in 2004. It's going to date me a lot. So over the last 15 years or so, I have seen the shift with this industry, from CDs, to digitals, to now we're full on streaming platforms, so I have seen that. I've been an independent artist for that long. I have had numerous distribution deals with Sony Red, Sony Orchard, those various platforms. However, I have maintained independence throughout my entire career. And now I have moved into the role of producer as the artist. So that was my speech last time when I spoke at the Music Expo. So I've put out 7 different albums over the years and numerous different singles. And then I also work as a producer, a voiceover artist, a vocalist, all of those various roles. But yes, I have seen all facets of this, and knowing how to strategize plan for your release is super vital, especially in today's digital and streaming and social media based world.
Okay. Let's start with the first pillar. I want to talk about team building. And you talked about different distribution deals and things like that. But what was the first step that you took in building your team, and what was the first win that you got on team building? Adding people to the operation that you had going on.
Sure. Well, let's talk about my year 2012, 2013. That was probably my most successful year in that season, because we had really strategized. At this point, I was about my 5th record in, and the first few were good, but they were very trial and error. I didn't really have anyone sort of coaching me through this, so I had to learn a lot of the things along the way. So by the time 2012, 2013 rolled around, I pretty much said, okay, we're gonna come up with a plan. We're gonna come up with a strategy. We're gonna hire a team. I was living in Nashville. I've been in Nashville for 9 years, so I had done the album front to back, 100% with a plan and with a budget. And previous to that, I didn't have that. I was just kind of winging it, which I don't recommend. So this album, which was called Gasoline, that was my most successful album. We had charted in Music Row. I charted in Europe. I was on CMT, GAC, Zeus, TNN, all the radio platforms, and I had the team. So I hand selected my promoter. I had a tour manager. I had a publicist. Actually, I had 2 publicists at the time. And then my band, I had a merchandise girl, I had an intern, and I had a various group of people that we all worked collectively together. And I also had a corporate sponsorship. I was endorsed with Luna Guitars, Ernie Ball Strings, and I was with Chrysler, and I was with Ram Trucks. So they had sponsored me in my tour, and it was a very well planned out then in strategy. And I was kind of stemming off of the opening acts that I was doing. I opened for Lone Star and Jason Aldean and Lee Brice, Justin Moore, a bunch of those kind of level artists. And I was doing shows like with NFR out in Vegas, and really being strategic about the release of the album, making sure every opportunity is 100% maximized with appearances. We had done, different Fox News morning appearances, all the radio things that we could get, all the write-ups that we could get, and it really was a team effort, all communicating.
Back on. There we go. So you were very much all in from the very beginning. You went big. You built a whole team around everything that you're doing. That's awesome. And,
yeah.
And what were the things like? Tell me about the first time that you put out a piece of content, some marketing, a marketing piece. Maybe it's a music video, and you went. And everyone engaged with it, right? Like you put this thing out in the world, and fans were like, yes, this is it, love it. And you're getting that engagement from the marketing. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So back in 2013, I put out a music video called Amen for the Weekend, and it was very successful because exactly like you just said, we put it out and it was picked up by all of the different networks like CMT, GAC, Zeus, TNN, and I didn't have any label. I have my own label, LeBlaze Records. So that was something back 2013. It was very rare. Now it's not as rare, but it was really rare. How many years ago? That'd be 7 years ago now. So yeah, it was on the cusp of just this kind of breakthrough of independent artists like myself, being able to have that opportunity and have that chance to kind of be seen. And this was before Instagram. This was before all of those. This was before, TikTok and stuff like that. So we really went at it kind of 100% full force. And we just basically knocked on all the doors till they said yes.
And so what was the prep like on that? You said knocked on all the doors. We got some questions over the Slack about pitch plans. That's kind of what I'm talking about, right? Like
Yeah.
knowing what doors you want to knock on, and the way to get yeses when you're knocking is to knock on the right doors, right? So what was your experience like in the preparation for, hey, where are we taking this, right? Where are we going with this?
Yeah. So I had hired a radio promoter at the time, and I remember meeting up there numerous times. It's like a big kind of boardroom type office on Music Row. I'm not sure if they're still there or not, but and
well,
we
it's
had
probably
sat
a
down.
condo, but maybe the company's still around somewhere. No, sorry, Music Row jokes. Anyways, carry on.
Yeah. So basically we had just sat around the table and we all strategized, myself, my tour manager, my partner, as well as the main people all on the team, and we came up with a plan, with a launch, with a date, all the things that we hope to do. And this is something that I instill on the artists that I produce, because I feel like we still miss this whole thing with planning. I just think we just kind of jump into it and just hope for the best. And that is the last thing that you should be doing. You really need to be writing out a bullet list, an outline, a kind of goal sheet, and making sure that you are sticking to those goals, making sure that you have weekly conference calls, making sure that there is constant communication, and there should be tasks allotted. So Justine needs to be doing X, Y, and Z. Mr. Manager or booking person needs to be doing these tasks. And then you check in a couple times a week, and there should be a weekly call. At the time there wasn't Zoom or anything like that, we'd usually be meeting in person or an on the phone call. But now with all the platforms, you should not be negating that process in any form at all. So I just can't stress that enough, because when you have a budget, you should be obviously going into a release and having a plan, having a budget set in time. I get asked a lot, hey, can you produce my song? Hey, can you do X, Y, and Z? And the first question that I ask them is, do you have a budget? And 9 times out of 10, they don't. And that's very shocking to me, because I would never go into something just kind of figuring out along the way. If you don't know what things cost, then do your research. There's a million things out there that can tell you some ballpark figures. If you're just expecting the money to magically appear, then that's obviously not the way to go. And it's very frustrating being on the industry side now. I'm sure you can attest to this, Nathan. It's just because you're wasting people's time if you do not have a plan and you do not have a set budget. If you're not in the budget that you hope for, you either can do two things. You can either keep raising money, getting investors, getting money, or you need to lower your expectations and lower your level of people that you want to be hiring, because everybody has a price point. The really good, successful people are going to be at a certain price, and then you're sort of like your newer people are going to be at a certain price. And so you have to kind of work with what you have.
I think that's a great point. I think that a key thing to think about here too is that the new person, when you go back to those original goals of like, what's your artistic vision? What do you want out of a team? And a lot of people, honestly, they sometimes I go, hey, it doesn't sound like you want to hire a big firm. You want big firm results. But when I talk to you about the culture and the artistic environment that you're looking for, you might want to hire somebody who's brand new at this too, who's going to be a little bit more bought in with you, and that you're going to be the focus point. And so it really adjusting those expectations, not only to what you see as possible success, but also knowing the culture that you want to create. And if you are an artist that you want to be front and center and the most important person, you know, that like where the person working for you isn't distracted by a top tier client that's on their roster, you probably need somebody newer in the industry. That doesn't mean that they're not good. It just means that they're new and they need to have a fire, the same fire that you do. So building that team is there's a lot that goes into that. So tell me a little bit about that. Take me even a step back. What did you prepare before you hired these team members, right? So we're talking about operations. That's the team building. We're talking about marketing, PR, brand development, and performance. Now you brought a team in for this first release. You came out of the gate, you brought a whole team in for all of these buckets, right?
I did.
What did you prepare beforehand, and how did you approach even those service companies? What was the process there to even approaching them to bring them on the team? What was the vetting process, and what did they want to see from you before they decided to work with you? Was it just the budget? Did you bring content? What was that process like?
Yeah, so I had done a couple other single releases with a few other different promoters before then, and I learned a lot through each one of those processes. Being more prepared as an artist and being able to ask the right questions and being able to sort of carry myself in a way that would be very neutral to all platforms, if that makes sense. Like kind of going in there with a better expectation and knowing kind of what to delegate the task for. So by this time, this was probably my third promoter I was working with, and I got the money. Because this stuff isn't cheap. If you're not aware, if you're an artist, if you're not aware how much this costs, unless you're with a major label and they're backing this for you, this stuff is $10,000, $15,000, $25,000 and up, and that's a very minimal budget. So we were fundraising money basically through private sponsors, private donors. I've never done a Kickstarter. I've never done anything like that, and I was basically treating my business. So I was touring 200 dates a year. So we had a tour van, a trailer, we had a whole production, and I was constantly on the road, making money, making shows, making appearances, anything I could. If I didn't have something on my books, I was booking a house concert. I was booking a country club. I was booking a coffee house, whatever I could get to get me some money along the way in my travels. I had won a contest with Ram Trucks, which allowed me to be sponsored by them. So that helped a little bit. But this is really important. And I just want to make sure that everybody understands this. You want to treat this like a business. So you do want to create a DBA. You do want to create LLC. You do want to create a bank account for yourself. And every dollar that you get, whether it's in a gross revenue sense, you need to be putting aside anywhere from 10 to 20% back into that, what they call an escrow account. So this is going to help pay for the publicity. This is going to help pay for the managers like yourself. This is going to help pay for all of the different people that are going to help you become successful. And this is all being done sort of behind the scenes. And then, like you said, when you're ready, you're like, okay, I have $10,000 put aside to promote this single or promote this album or promote this EP. I'm prepared to spend this money. And then you need to be creating a sheet. You may not be the best with Excel spreadsheets or documents, and that's absolutely okay. But that's where your team comes into place. You have this meeting and you say, okay, where is all of this money going to? So it's going to be, $3,000 for my radio tour. I have to pay for hotels. I got to pay for my guitar player. I got to pay for all of my gas and traveling expenses. I mean, the list goes on and on. So being able to be treating this as a business as much as possible. Like you say, we do get very emotional and we feel like I get that a lot. I feel
the budgets. I think what's important, like what you said, is very important to hire professionals in each of these buckets. To hire a marketing professional, to hire professional brand development and partnership solicitation, to hire booking services, a band, a full performance rig, to hire and to get on this professional level, very, very, very expensive. And there are ways to, so when planning, you take it all the way back to that discovery point. And in the discovery, in the objectives and expectations, we can't set realistic objectives and realistic expectations if we're not talking about realistic budgets, right? We really can't. And so if you have objectives that are, hey, on this record, first you've vetted your own music, you've gone and you've found that people have said you have the talent to be on this level, and you're being honest about that. You're saying my talent is at its peak. It's okay, first of all, it's okay for your talent to not be at its peak. It's okay for your talent to still be growing and getting more. That doesn't mean you have to sit behind a curtain until you're the most talented person in the world. It's important to be honest about the talent level that you're at. But if you're saying, I am at my peak performance, I am at my peak talent, and I'm ready for the big time, you have to have a very strong strategy at how you're going to acquire the budget to operate on that level. And that may be that may be a label. And so when I talk about capturing your community, if you're wanting to operate on that level and you need a label because that's the best avenue to getting the budget to back this operation, which may be the case, it may not be the case, then your community needs to be people who work in labels. You've got to get to Nashville. You've got to get to LA. You've got to get to New York, and you've got to get around the people who work for the labels. And then your entire release strategy needs to be focused on capturing your community, which is the label A&R, the people around you. You put that single out, and you're putting it out in a way that you go, this isn't about streams. This isn't about this. It's about capturing the attention of the label. But walk that back, split that apart. Maybe you don't want the label. Maybe your talent is still developing, but you want to be proactive and you want to be building. You start to set these objectives. You still need to know the budget. I love things that you pointed out. You touched on brand partnership in that you won a contest with Ram Trucks. Is that correct?
I did.
Right? Okay, so this comes from knowing the brands that you can connect with, where the fan, they're going to look at you, they're going to go, you're the type of artist, you're the type of content that's going to relate to our customer base. You're going to fit in this contest, so you're going to get entered into the contest. You don't enter contests that you can't do well in, am I right? Like, if you can't compete in the contest, don't enter the contest. If I'm a metal band, I don't want to be competing in a country rock contest, right? Knowing your demographic, knowing who you are, knowing the brands, brand contests, things like this are great. Marketing opportunities, visibility opportunities, publicity opportunities, doing the research. Let's not knock things like The Voice, right? It may not be the path for everybody, but it is a path for a lot of artists. If you can compete on The Voice, put together a strategy that says, I'm going to build my operation. I'm going to get my LLCs in place. I'm going to get all of these things in place. I'm going to get my music in place. And I'm going to do it in a way that positions me to go on The Voice. That can be a strategy that makes sense for you. But the randomization of, oh, I hope this is going to happen, or I hope that's going to happen, or I'll take the opportunities as they come in, is how you end up on The Voice, but then you get bunked out on the third thing or whatever, and then nothing happens to you for another 5 years. So I love the stories. I love you taking us into how you built out each of these buckets, just totally reinforcing, hey, I've had a person run and shop on all of these things, making sure that each task is going on. And you need to be, as the artist, you need to be in the driver's seat of all of those objectives, of all of those expectations, and making sure that everything's getting done in the right way. We're about 20 minutes out on this session. I've loved talking with everybody. I'd love to open it up to, we were going to do a little live performance strategy build out, but I think I'm going to jump us into the Q&A section, if that's all right with everybody.
Yeah.
And open it up to the people watching. We have a question here from Jonathan. when you say investors, what does an investor pitch sound like? Where do you find them? This is great. Justine, if you want to speak to your experience as much as you feel comfortable, I'd love to hear from you on that, and then I'll tackle this a little after as well.
Sure. So back up to 2011 or 12, I was doing a series of shows. I'm originally from Detroit, so I was performing full time up there before I moved to Nashville. So I had met a lot of business people at my shows. I was playing a lot of like high end country clubs and things like that. So I had met a lot of different people. And the thing that they would say to me is like, oh my gosh, you're, whatever adjective, love your voice, this, that, whatever. And, the question is, why haven't you made it? Like that, I heard that a lot. And I don't know what people's definition of that is, but at any rate, I just tell them like, this is what I do. I appreciate you liking my show and that kind of thing. And it just takes a lot of money to get your stuff out in radio and get your stuff out onto TV and those platforms. And I always just put it out there almost as a joke, almost as a sarcasm, like smart aleck remark. I said, if you want to sponsor me, let's go. And they did. So I had written up, I'm a marketing major at Eastern Michigan University. So I studied marketing and I studied public relations. That was my major. It wasn't even music. So I got really good at kind of knowing what to say. And so I wrote up a pitch letter. I broke down what I hoped to get from the investment, what I hoped they would get in return. And all of those just kind of bullet points. It was maybe 2 or 3 pages at most. And then I had done some things in return. So I had done a commercial. I did a radio commercial for a mattress company for free, but they sponsored me. I had done, like I said, the Ram trucks stuff with them, and they had put money towards me. I had a doctor who had put money towards my career, and I had done, some different things in return in terms of like promotion and that kind of thing. And now this was like 8 years ago. This is before the influencer age that we're in. So now it's even more easier to get this kind of stuff, but you have to kind of go after it in a very detailed and very specific way. You have to be taken seriously. You just can't kind of, be really touch and go with it. You really have to follow through and follow up and give them something back, because no one just wants to give money and get nothing from it. So.
Thank you. Sorry, guys. My wife is checking in on me. She's like, hey, you doing good out there? And we're doing great. Yeah, I would agree. So I think there's a couple of different places to look at investment, right? You've got angel investment, which is going to be there are even angel investment firms. Honestly, I think again, this brings it back to that research space of in your team building. Hey, I need investment. And researching, hey, who's investing in music right now? There are music incubators where people are specifically investing in artists in different formats than labels. But I mean, your number one investment into an artist is still going to come from a label. That is still an investment into an artist's career, pending the contract. But also, I mean, I think the first place to think about angel investment, again, thinking back to your community, you've got your brand partnerships and your sponsorships. There's a way to approach brand sponsors that's going to be based off of your activations, based off of your engagements, right? Hey, I can be a spokesperson for your brand. I can engage your audience. I can provide you content. These are trade type exchanges for investment or sponsorship. Straight up investment, totally viable. It comes back to some of the things Justine was saying of properly setting up your LLCs and your businesses. And then if you're set up properly as an S Corp or a LLC, then really anybody can invest into that entity. You just have to really, line out what the expectations are and what that is. And then, as a manager, the first thing we always say in these conversations is, and hire a lawyer. Absolutely make sure that there's an attorney on there. But I think that first of all, the first thing and this sounds kind of tacky, but do you know any angel investors, right? Because if you don't, your chances of getting an angel investor are probably pretty slim. You have to have a relationship there. And so if you're looking for funding, if you're wanting private funding, it is not tacky to objectively think about how you can connect with people who have funds and want to connect to the arts. There's nothing tacky about that. Start playing golf, right? I'm telling you, think objectively. What are your goals? And if you don't know anybody that is an investor, this is going to be a hard conversation to have. So you do need to start meeting people that are interested in investing in the arts, and you need to be paying attention on where they hang out. Now, from there, the pitch needs to probably come back to the art. And so that's where we talk about all of these things. We need to have a brand identity. We need to have an engaged narrative with a fan base. And then you're probably going to want to invite these investors out to probably some sort of private showcase or a place where they can see what the talent is, and then you're going to dive into a hard pitch, right? At that point. But the first key is to surround yourself with people who are interested in investing in the arts, and knowing where they spend their time, right? And that comes down to research and digging in. Here's another question. How would you recommend finding someone new to the industry these days, interested in new artists with regular music releases and getting them playlisted, etc.? Caleb, artists. How would you recommend finding someone new to the for team building? You mean is that what somebody new to the industry, interested in new artists with regular music releases? Maybe I can get a confirmation that that's the questions. You're looking for new team members who are new in the industry. Sorry, hoping that's the question. I'll jump in on that and just say, honestly, like here in Nashville, we have Belmont University, and there's graduates coming out of Belmont with music industry degrees all the time. Young guys like this, but sometimes maybe it's the talent buyer of your local venue. It has taken a liking to you and wants to do, okay, awesome. Yes, for team building. I think it's about engaging people who are taking interest. So again, expanding your network. But if you know your objectives and you know what you're trying to do, and then if you can see somebody in your community who's kind of chipping away at some of the same things, that's a collaboration conversation saying, hey, why don't we do some of this together? I produce new singles for a few artists. We have tons loaded up, ready to go. Yeah, I mean, I think as a producer, you're going to want to be careful being the point maker on team building. That's a place where I'd really make sure that you have the expectations of your role as a producer properly lined out. But yeah, I mean, Justine, as a you've now moved into this producer role. What are you advising your clients on their team building? They say, hey, I've got this thing done. I've made this record. And you're saying, hey, go build a team. Maybe you're connecting them with people, but that's not really the expectation all the time, right? Like your job's to produce great music. So what's your advice there?
Yeah, that's a good question, because people do come to me. They've seen the history of what I'm able to do as a female country artist, independent artist. And so I work with a lot of girls, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. And I have to strategize a plan for them. However, that's not my job. My job is to produce their music and maybe write with them and mix it. That's my job. So I if I like them, I volunteer sort of my expertise, and I also do a little bit of consulting as needed. But I do advise them. I said, we have got to get your team, and I've gotten a few of my girls signed out to a management team out in LA, and a couple of different people here, because that's not my role. And I'm really clear about that. I will help you kind of hold your hand, and I hope we continue making music beyond this point. But after I make my track for them, it's up to them to take it to that next level. And so yes, I've gone in with them to meetings at Arista Media. You know who that is. I've brought them into different meetings here in Nashville, kind of holding their hand and coaching them through, because at the end of the day, I don't want that responsibility. That's not my job. But I do believe enough in the artist, and I do believe enough in my work as a producer, that I want them to continue having success and not just sit stagnant, because that's essentially what happens. They don't know what to do after they get done with the song, and they just sit and they're like, well, what do I do next? And so I really encourage them to try to get signed to a manager, get signed to a publicist, get signed to a some sort of person that can help them, anything. Because if they can, I always say this, you can have the best song in the world, but if no one knows about it, then you're just wasting your time and your money.
And like Justine says, she's doing some consulting work with these with these clients. And Caleb, if you're experienced in the release structure, that I don't think that's a tacky thing to do, to say, hey, I can consult on some release strategy on the other side of this. That's totally fine. But I mean, honestly, at a certain point, where we have come in the industry is the first team building that an artist is probably going to do is probably going to be in a for-hire situation, unless their talent is exceptional out of the gate and things are really going viral. They're probably going to need to hire a development team. And so, without being too pitchy, I mean, the point of the 0 to 60 program is to offer a space where artists can come and learn this stuff. So, and there's plenty of companies like ours that do artist development, they do artist education, strategy building, and things like that. So Nashville's full of them, but I've been seeing them pop up, all over the country. And our messaging is that artist development is an underserviced area of the music industry. And when I see competition pop up for the 0 to 60 program, I'm always like promoting it. I'm like, yes, more artist development, because there's more artists than there are skilled people in developing artists. So you got to get.
Yeah.
I would suggest, as a producer, I would find a service that is compatible to what you're doing as a producer and do a partnership, right? But it's going to be, it should be a service partnership. Maybe it's a publicist who does some extra strategy planning. Find a partner that's working on the business side that probably has a paid for service that you can partner with. And hey, honestly, you get yourself a little referral kickback if that's the way you do business. Some people do that, some people don't. But work partnerships. Start creating partnerships. Start creating community. Build each other up. That's the best thing to do.
Yeah, I was gonna add to that, because back in the day, A&R used to do the artist development, and now
Right.
that's sort of a dying breed, more or less, because more and more people are independent, or they have smaller deals. So like you said, Nathan, yes, we have to be responsible and making sure that the artist development, and that doesn't mean your mom or your friend or your best buddy is developing you. Like, you have to get an outside professional opinion that's working with you kind of day in, day out for a minimum 6 months, who can help you, do those test shoots, do those test videos, spend hours and hours in the studio making sure that the best choices of your songs and the style, and what key and what timbre of the voice, and all of these things which matter, which we just skip over all that, and we just rush right into the release of something. And I see it over and over and over again, and it's like, what do? You just have to help they figure it out. But yes, now that we're talking about it, just want to make sure we make that really clear.
I think it's funny you say, it's not your mom. With my team, with the development team at 0 to 60, we joke a lot. It's not a joke. It's funny. We tell people that we are the perfect service. We are the perfect operating for the mom and dad who manage their kid, right? This is something that we've kind of made fun of and teased, and like we call them the dadager or the momager. And anybody who's worked in the industry understands this. The parents are hard to deal with, but the parent is the one who is actually looking out the most for their kid. And if we can keep the mom or the dad in a role of protection and making sure that their kid is focused on the right things, maybe not overstressed or overstrapped, but still staying productive, and we can come in and provide the industry know-how and guidance and things like that, that dad or that mom could make a great manager long-term for that artist. And that's just something that we've teased a lot in this industry, but we need to be more open. This is a passion point for me. We need to protect our artists. And sometimes the family member being a key part is a great protection piece. Sometimes it's not, but let's be more open to new ways of working that protect artists and get them across the line. Yeah, A&R type. Caleb saying he's wearing all the hats. Yeah, welcome to it, man. At the beginning, you're gonna wear all the hats. As you see more success in your career path, you get to start handing those hats off, y'all. But hey, Justine, thank you so much for coming in and joining me and just adding to this conversation. It's so good to have. You're active, you're in it, you're doing it. Give me a last shout out. What do you have coming up? Any releases, any fun, any new projects you want to plug?
Yeah. Well, I have my own single coming out, Just Sing. And we're actually shooting the music video for it on Monday. And then I have another single coming out. We have a pitch plan. We're working on it right now. It's called Dun Dun Dun. It's a duet with Nick Johnson. So that'll be coming out in about 6 to 8 weeks. So
there you go. Exactly.
Thanks, guys.
We're in activation. Thank you all for watching. Again, my name's Nathan Dohse. Thank you to Music Expo for having me. I am the author of the 0 to 60 program by AGD Entertainment. We are an artist management and artist development firm out of Nashville, Tennessee. We do free strategy sessions with artists over the website. We've got a handful of coaches. You just jump on the website, you find a time that's free. You're going to jump in, you're going to do 45 minutes. Go in. I encourage everybody, take this outline and say, hey, I want to go deeper on a couple of these things. With one of these coaches. They're going to talk very specific to your situation and what you're going through. So please go do that. Please sign up for the Caring for Creators contest that we're doing with Music Expo. We're doing a free graphic design package. We've got some other prizes in there. So sign up for that. And thanks again, everybody, for having me.
Justine, Nathan, thank you so much for being with us today. All the preparation that came into this session. Please, everyone, drop a 1, or actually a 2 for both of them. If you enjoyed the session, if you learned things, I dropped the link to the contest registration page again. So make sure you register, and a lucky winner will get basically the free creator package and invitation to Music Expo Summit in November 3rd and 4th. We're going to quickly take a break and restart a new live stream. So we'll ask you to refresh for our last 2 sessions starting at 3 o'clock Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern time. Justine, thank you so much. Good luck with the release. Always great to have you. We're going to probably have you back in November, I think. We need to talk about what you want to talk about.
Yes,
this time,
I love it.
You decide what you talk about. And Nathan, I hope to see you again. I mean, I love the screenshots. We share it on the screen. Maybe we send them as a package to everybody by email.
Yeah, send them on out. Everybody grab them.
Yeah. Yep. And then and we'll send the follow-up to drop the links if we're still missing the links. But thank you, everyone. We'll go take a short break and go to the next session. Bye, guys.
Thank you, everybody.